This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Today's podcast is brought to you by Leverage, a new fully featured decentralized futures exchange without compromise. Are you ready to trade the future of crypto today? Well, Leverage is a DEX, so you can trade with your keys and sign orders just with one click, and Leverage is fast. Yes, indeed, Leverage is powered by Gluon, a new layer 2 solution with the scalability and speed of a centralized exchange and the super low fees of a DEX. Yes, Leverage, the new exchange that combines the best features of CeFi and DeFi, so you can trade crypto spot or crypto derivatives with up to 100x leverage while maintaining control of your assets at all times. It's like William Gibson said, the future is already here, but in this case, it's evenly distributed and completely decentralized. Go to leverage.io, and leverage is spelled Leverj.io, and trade the future of crypto today.
Yeah, boy!
My guest today is Rich Sanders. Rich is the co-founder and lead investigator for CipherBlade, the blockchain investigation agency. Hey, welcome back to the show, Rich. So Rich is a blockchain investigator, an on-chain analyst, if you like. And, Rich is one of these guys, he's out there fighting the good fight. He's exposing the bad actors in the blockchain ecosystem. And last time you were on the show, Rich, you were talking about the lack of KYC and AML in many of the big Asian crypto exchanges, and I think why this was quite interesting is you, I think, successfully passed KYC on some of these exchanges dressed as, if memory serves, Taylor Swift, Osama bin Laden, and Borat.
Very nice.
So let's just touch base on this first. Any updates on your your KYC and adventures here?
Well, I wish I had more time for those adventures recently, but in the more recent months, as tends to happen with any bull market, there has just been a massive uptick in fraud. So as much as I would love to continue the KYC adventures, I got a lot of requests for it. There's a lot of people that want me to dress up as like Batman was a very common request. I would love to do it. I'm just like burning a candle at both ends and sleep deprived as it is.
No doubt, no doubt. And look, if anyone is interested in seeing the photos of Rich, that he's submitting, fake IDs that you've made, right, with these ridiculous photos, and they are spectacular. So you can just go to what's your Twitter handle there, Rich?
Raindrop Actual.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes, but worth a look. All right, well. It's kind of weird where we are at the moment. So you talked about us being in a bull market, Rich, and when we are in a bull market, that does tend to attract bad actors and scammers and the like. And so there's a couple of things I want to talk about today. One is BitClout, and whether they're a scam or not, I'm not sure, but we'll talk about that in a second. But I see you've also been looking at I guess it's one of the big US ATM operators, right?
I would say I've been looking at ATM operators across the board with an emphasis on the ones in the US. There's definitely one that is a shining example of what not to be.
Right. Do you want to name them here before we get into this, or just kind of keep it general?
It starts with a C and it rhymes with coin flip.
Okay, there you go. Well, I guess, and just to backtrack here, if you look at, because I was just looking yesterday at, there's like these ATM coin radar sites, right, that show the rise of ATMs around the world and probably particularly in the US, and they not quite going vertical, but there's mad growth in the ATM space at the moment, isn't there?
There is, and on average across the board, it's been about 3x per company, or the amount of machines in the US at least has gone up 300% in the past year alone. And what's really concerning about that really shouldn't require someone that's an investigator to point out, has there really legitimately been a 3x adoption in Bitcoin? I'm pretty sure that one doesn't need to start looking at, well, it's a bull market, people buying on Coinbase. I think in the real world, we haven't seen a 3x multiplier of people utilizing Bitcoin, which begs the question, what are these machines being used for?
And just before we get into that, can we try and make the good case first, or, the, what do you call it, the strongman argument for why people would use a crypto ATM legitimately, right? So what would be the strong business case for this growth that we're seeing in crypto ATMs at the moment?
I think it's a really good point to start on this, because my concern, which is why one of the reasons why I'm being so vocal about the bad operators, is I don't want to see government overregulate this space, and even specifically within ATMs. Cryptocurrency ATMs do have their place, and they do have their use cases. And a couple of examples of that might be, if there's somebody that gets cash for, let's say, a birthday present, or on occasion gets tips, and wants something that's quick, convenient. They don't have to go to a bank. They just want to convert it into a cryptocurrency. That's really what these ATMs are for. But when you start dialing down into looking at the fees, I mean, just like anything else, it's a trade-off, right? You're trading that convenience for a fee. They do have their place. I don't think that the quantity of the machines reflects the use case that I provided, though. That's the issue.
Okay, yeah, I think that is very fair, Rich. Okay, well, let's talk about this company. You said it rhymes with CoinFlip. I think it's a US company, and their website says they have something like 1,700 ATMs across 45 states of the US, and so they seem to be growing fast, like a lot of these companies. So what's the background here? Why, when and why did you start looking into this particular company?
So across the board, I had been looking into ATM operators because I know that just as a broader typology, they've had all sorts of issues with money laundering, right? And I'm not the first one to notice this. I mean, CipherTrace put out a report last year that said 88% of ATM funds go offshore. And generally, when you're looking at offshore, you have to bear in mind, what is the use case, right? So under that use case I described earlier, bearing in mind, especially if you're looking at US only ATM operators, CoinFlip is one of those as of now, you should be seeing on the blockchain majority of the funds going to Kraken, Coinbase, Gemini. But when you see the majority of the funds are going to exchanges that actually restrict US citizens or residents, or are specifically in Africa, that's problematic. And CoinFlip in particular, actually even more machines, at least according to their CEO. Apparently now they have north of 1,800, and they intend to double that by the end of the year. Allegedly, they have tripled every single year since they've been in business. And at that point, again, this is another great example of doesn't take a blockchain analyst. If you have a company that's growing that fast, is that really due to the adoption? I mean, like, business common sense would dictate to me, if I was turning over such a insane margin and I was able to scale so fast, something might be wrong, right? And that's when I started looking into on the blockchain, what exactly is going on here?
Yeah, and look, so you actually put a breakdown of this on your Twitter, but I'm just looking at it now. You've broken down the largest destinations of CoinFlip BTC purchases. So just very quickly, something like 57% of these have gone to Binance, and then 9% have gone to an African exchange called Luno. About 6.5% have gone to Coinbase, and then you've got some that have gone to Huobi, something called My Patricia, that's a Nigerian database, and Yellowcard.io, which is another Nigerian user base, and then the final one is Remitano. I'm not so sure if I'm saying these right. Again, in Nigeria. So just explain what you're pointing out here, and what these breakdowns actually mean.
Sure. So I should start with the more difficult one, or not even difficult, but one that requires a little bit more context, which is Binance.
Okay.
So Binance is restricted to US residents. And I wish that I could tell you that the majority, or even a noteworthy portion of that volume, was just US residents saying, screw it, I don't care, I'm going to use a VPN. I mean, I'm a realist here. We all know they exist. In terms of things that I care about from like an AML lens, that's virtually non-existent. The issue with that, the reason why Binance is getting so much of this Bitcoin flow from companies like CoinFlip, is because there are good exchanges in Africa. And surprisingly, this would seem surprising to a lot of folks, but I'm not naming and shaming these Nigerian exchanges. A lot of them have been incredibly helpful.
Okay.
Busha, My Patricia, incredibly responsive to any investigations I'm on. They take action on these kind of, at the end of the day, this is if you read the CoinDesk article, for example, we'll reach out to these exchanges and we'll give them tips, right? So there's one of two responses. There's the bit refill, and maybe you could link that article in the notes here, where they're going to be incredibly combative, or there's going to be the exchanges that want to do the right thing, right? If it's very plain, hey, this exchange, or this exchange account rather, is receiving funds from a US ATM, and the person can't substantiate the funds, the only sensible thing to do is to lock the account and all the funds in it, right? And there's no middle ground in those reactions. And really, the issue with this boils down to, it is obvious that these are not remittance payments. If you're going to sit here and try to tell me, like the CoinFlip CEO did, that the majority of your volume is remittance payments, I'm going to look at you like you're crazy, and I think anyone should.
Okay, so and if that's the case, then Rich, so you're saying that these are not remittance payments, and yet it's kind of weird that all these transactions from CoinFlip ATMs are going to, well, a lot to Binance and then these African exchanges. So if they're not remittance payments, let's break it down. What do you think the transactions are?
So I should clarify a little bit more on the Binance.
Okay.
So specifically, when these exchanges like My Patricia and Luno and Busha and so on, whenever I have contacted them, what they're doing is they're offboarding or locking these accounts, right? The ones that are engaged in the what at one time is suspected and then is confirmed to be illicit activity, right? And then what happens is that volume has to go elsewhere. So unfortunately, that reality has been that volume goes to Binance. And could Binance do a little something better on that? Yeah, I would definitely say so. At the end of the day, and I think we kind of touched on this in the last podcast, but it also boils down to, when you have a KYC light system, inherently you're going to have people that just register a new account. It's quick and easy. I mean, there's not a whole lot more stopgaps Binance would be able to do other than screen for IPs from a region, restrict accounts after they get exposure from ATMs, or the one that nobody wants to see, require KYC. So their hands are a little bit tied on all that. The reason why it's problematic to see this sending exposure to these exchanges is that it's very obvious what's going on. And yeah, I would say, go sit outside one of these ATMs and just for a day, see who uses them. But I would tell you that's anecdotal, right? When I'm able to look on the blockchain and I've identified the cluster of wallets they use to fund all their outflows, and I can see these high level statistics, you don't need to get into these anecdotal, onesie twosie kind of stories. Look at this one machine. That's where their funds are going. So unless they can produce something that substantiates, the majority of this is remittance payments, which is just far removed from any semblance of reality, that's what's going on.
Okay, and just to be clear, can you explain a little bit more about exactly what you think is going on in terms of what kind of scams or elder fraud? There's a lot of different transaction origin stories that could be going on here, if that makes sense, right? So just walk us through a couple of examples.
So I would say that the common catch-all here is that you're absolutely right. It's going to be one of two things: people that are getting scammed, or people that are knowingly or unknowingly engaged in money muling. So let's talk about scamming first, because money muling is a little bit more complicated.
Okay.
The most common one by far is romance scams. And you'd be surprised the diversity of people that could get wrapped into that, right? I mean, there's people that are in their 20s. It's rare, but I've seen that happen. They meet someone on Tinder, they're overseas. Most of the time, like 95% plus of the time, it's going to be folks that are on the older side.
Well, tell the listeners what a romance scam is, and then explain how that can lead to someone going to a Bitcoin ATM and purchasing Bitcoin and sending it to either Binance or Nigeria or something. How does that work?
So generally the way that'll work is that these people will meet someone, and this is really important to point out. It's not always, but it's often on dating sites.
Yes.
So it could be anything from Tinder to, I mean, bearing in mind this is generally older folks, whatever the dating sites are, that stuff's all just completely out of my wheelhouse. Or they might meet someone on Facebook, or surprisingly, like Words with Friends, right? And then they'll move the conversation off platform. They'll move it onto WhatsApp or texting. They might even get on phone calls with these people. And this will go on for months, years. I mean, I've dealt with one case where it was 8 years somebody had this going on.
Wow.
And ultimately what ends up happening, these scammers send fake pictures. And a very common one that I almost cringe thinking about because I have the context, but you have to appreciate these folks are on the older side. They might not ask these questions. The most common one I see is the deployed soldier scam, where they meet someone online. They're claiming that they're a deployed soldier in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Nigeria, which is just kind of like, duh. Um, and then they'll say, "Oh, well, I got injured and I need money for, this surgery or that," and that's just not how it works. Or I need money to go home. Well, the military covers that travel. You don't need to pay for a leave form or pay for your leave travel. The military just handles that. Or the one that is like the huge red flag is that, at least in my time in, my longest deployment was 1 year. I've spoken to people that have had this going on for 3 years, and there's no such thing as a 3-year deployment right now in the U.S. Army. It doesn't work that way. So what ends up happening is these people get duped, and it's not far removed from, if anyone's familiar with like the Nigerian prince emails, right? It's the same people that were doing that are now doing this. And it's not just romance scams either, too. It's these fake investment scammers. Oh, hey, buddy, I want to be your friend, Andy. Oh, did you hear about this website that you can make 95% per day? And I mean, no matter what route you're looking at here, romance, investment fraud, the majority of the time it is coming out of Nigeria. And it's very plain when you start tracing this. If you look at the Binance deposit addresses, you see a whole bunch of ATM exposure. I'm pretty sure 10 people aren't marrying the same deployed soldier, right? If it's 10 different ATMs. It's very easy to trace this through. And a lot of these folks aren't sophisticated either, but that's a whole other can of worms.
Put this into context with CoinFlip then. Now, so you said, I think earlier you mentioned that you had spoken to CoinFlip's CEO. Is that right? Did you kind of put this data together and then put it to him? So what happened there? What is CoinFlip's response to what you're looking at?
You could say I spoke to him. It wasn't a conversation he intended on having, but basically he was doing an interview with a local meetup group. And this is a strategy that I fine-tuned, actually, amusingly to you at least, after the 2017 market, and there was all these scammers running ICOs. And that's something we'll probably clarify on at some point. Scammer doesn't have to be somebody that is intending to scam. It could be somebody running a seemingly legitimate business, but we'll get into that probably later on. Basically, he was doing this interview with a local meetup group, and I just threw some softball questions at first. I was like, "Hey, so what transaction analysis tool do you use?" Which, by the way, that's industry standard. You cannot have an effective AML program and not have a tool like Chainalysis or Elliptic or Crystal. You have to look at the blockchain. I mean, this is basic stuff that predates even cryptocurrencies. If you're having an effective AML program, you have to look at where the money's going. Duh, kind of stuff, right? So he totally dropped the ball on that one. Then he openly admitted to not doing any transaction analysis. Allegedly, they just picked up CipherTrace like a month ago, but that doesn't matter. I mean, you can sit in the garage. It doesn't make you a car. You have to actually use the thing, right? There was a whole bunch of flops that he had. And basically at a point, I was just like, all right, enough. And I put a question to the chat and said, look, are you aware? Here's the proof. And I sent him a graph with all the addresses and everything. The majority of your funds go to the destinations you mentioned earlier. He had no idea. Then he tried to say it was all remittance payments. It was pretty amusing. Clips on that will be out soon.
Oh gosh. So I mean, wow, the saga continues. And I suppose, just to be clear here, well, I'm certainly not accusing CoinFlip of being an aware bad actor, shall we say. And look, it's your right to do that, Rich. Perhaps you are, but you're saying that they're just willfully ignoring the data that shows how the vast majority of their machines are being used. They just don't want to know.
Absolutely. And this is the kind of tactic that I used back in like 2017, 2018 on these dishonest ICOs, right? If you get these people live and you ask them the tough questions, they choke. As opposed to if they were asked, like, for example, if I emailed CoinFlip and I said, hey, were you aware of this? I probably wouldn't have gotten a response at all. Or I would have gotten some boilerplate stuff like, oh, we're looking into CipherTrace. But at the end of the day, you put them on notice. At that point, they can't deny they're aware of the issue. So I had a very decisive strategy in why I took that approach. And you're absolutely right. I mean, at this point, they can try to continue what they've been doing, which is banking on the fact nobody's going to check on this. They're relying on the fact that those in government, aren't looking at the blockchain like people like me are. But once you kind of gather this stuff and you spoon feed it to people, I mean, it's real obvious. It's you can't argue against the Bitcoin blockchain. It just, that is what it is, right? That's not an opinion. That's not, I think, theory. That's where their Bitcoin's going. So once you corner them with that, what are they going to come back with?
So what is the solution then? What should, in an ideal world scenario, what should these companies do to try and address that problem?
Well, there are good ATM operators, right? And
Okay.
one that comes to mind is Digital Mint, right? But their team, I think it's about 2/3 of their team works in compliance.
Wow.
So when you have this high risk of a typology, ATMs, you factor that into how you run your business, right? You have to take a risk-based approach to this. In fact, one of my clients is an ATM operator that allows Monero, which would probably sound crazy to most people, but they have a sufficient risk-based approach. And there have been like very surprisingly few issues with having Monero relative to Bitcoin. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is still the cryptocurrency of choice, especially for these non-sophisticated scammers that are coming out of Nigeria. And the things that you have to do are really simple. You get one of these tools. You restrict withdrawals to exchanges that just would not make sense. If it's a withdrawal to a self-custodial wallet, okay, like you can't just restrict that. That's fair. But then from there, you use one of these tools. Okay, the funds went to Luno, then your system triggers an alert and you take a follow-on action. But the bottom line is that the majority of these companies aren't looking at the blockchain. So they can't even get the alert in the first place. They can't restrict the withdrawals that would be obvious. And I mean obvious, right? And this is kind of the silver bullet here. All of these ATM operators have a backend that they can log into. And a lot of these machines, this is not a very commonly known fact, have cameras built into them. So when they're seeing these transactions from, let's say Jane Doe, who's 80 years old, I hate to say it, but I'm pretty sure Jane Doe isn't sending funds to Binance. I'm pretty sure Jane Doe isn't the, paid signal group leader or whatever that's advertising herself on Twitter. I'm pretty sure Jane Doe is getting scammed.
Yeah. Oh man, poor Jane Doe. Okay. Okay. Well, I hope there's a good outcome to all of this. I have my doubts, but look, let's switch gears, Rich. Let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk BitClout.
In today's crypto market, the team at Brave New Coin are the sector's leading builders of custom crypto indices. BNC's powerful indexing engine draws on Brave New Coin's premium data to calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. BNC's custom indices help you to gain exposure to the crypto assets class and track your performance against the market without having to become a stock picker. Not sure what you need? A Brave New Coin consultant can help you assess your requirements. Contact BNC today to find out more. Are you ready to trade the future of crypto today? Introducing Leverage, a self-custodial decentralized exchange that performs with the speed and features you're accustomed to. Leverage is fast. It's powered by Gluon, a revolutionary DeFi infrastructure that makes DeFi work at scale. It brings speed, transparency, and massive gas efficiencies to its users. Say goodbye to exchange hacks, front-running, Ethereum network congestion, and high fees. Leverage is the future of trading. It combines the best features of CeFi with all the benefits of DeFi. Like William Gibson said, the future is already here, but in this case, it's evenly distributed and completely decentralized. Go to leverage.io and trade the future of crypto today.
All right, we're back, and I'm with Rich Sanders, the co-founder, lead investigator for CipherBlade. And Rich, you will have seen this BitClout thing, right? So it's just kind of popped up on crypto Twitter during the last week, 2 weeks, something like that. And yeah, it's a little bit of a strange one. No one really knows who exactly is behind it, or exactly even what it is or how it works. Do you want to just try and nutshell again? Let's use the strongman argument here. Can you try and explain what it is and assume to begin with that this thing is legit?
So with BitClout, that's a great example of one where I actually just got asked about this for the first time the other day. And the way that you introduced BitClout there told me everything I needed to know to tell you stay clear, which is nobody really knows who's behind it, right? And it's not to say that any anonymous team is scammers, but essentially the overwhelming majority of scammers are anonymous teams, right? There are some promising DeFi projects that are ran by anonymous teams. That's great, but that's not an apples to apples comparison. If you look at how BitClout is actually managed, you can't compare that to an anonymous team with DeFi. The issue really boils down to this, right? And we touched on this in the first segment. We've got a bull market. We've got a bunch of people that want to make money, and there's a lot more people that want to scam those people to take their money. You got a whole bunch of greed. You got people that want to get rich quick. When ultimately, and this will be a core point I'll get into at some point. If people could just let their sats be, they would be better in the long run, right? BitClout being an example where, you know, nobody knows who's behind the team. There's a complete lack of transparency as to what's happening with the Bitcoin. It just doesn't make sense. There's so many red flags before you even look at the blockchain.
So let's just try and explain what it is. It's a little bit strange, but essentially there's a BitClout, a marketplace, and they have essentially assigned tokens to all these different, I guess, crypto influencers and celebrities, right? So it's like they're kind of leveraging growth hacking tactics here, in the hope that they will get all these influencers and celebrities to tweet about it and get involved. And that has actually, happened a little bit. And so I think the idea is you can buy your BitClout tokens, or the influencer can claim them, and then they get a portion of it, and then anyone else they would say, invest in the tokens of your favorite celebrity or whatever it is. But the kicker is, you have to pay Bitcoin to get whatever the BitClout token is, and your favorite influencer of choice. And the website literally says you can't turn it back into Bitcoin through them at the moment, and I don't think there's any secondary markets for BitClout at the moment. So, man, Rich, talk about
I wasn't
red
even
flags.
aware of that latter part, by the way. I mean, that just goes to show. I was just asked about this the other day. I looked at it for about 90 seconds before I looked at it on the blockchain, but I didn't even know that last part, that you couldn't even withdraw. I mean, like, that should just be such a red flag to people, right? And like, there's so many red flags even that you just went through, or like the fact that, bearing in mind copyright or the use of all this, right? There's a reason why the team is anonymous, right? And it's not to say that these scammers are stupid. They understand people from a psychological perspective. They have a perfect read on the people that are in the market right now. You've got these influencers, or more accurately, the celebrities you mentioned. They don't know this stuff. Of course, they're gonna tweet it so they can make a few $100 grand easily, and it just spirals. I mean, like, it's actually brilliant how they put it together.
Yeah, well, that is, it's growth hacking 101, and it just, when you apply crypto tokenomics and vanity, it's all in a bull market. It is, it's like bees to a honeypot, and you can have a look at the Bitcoin address. And I was looking at this, and so it looks like around the BitClout guys have received 2,891 BTC, Rich. That's pretty crazy already.
It's concerning. That's a good way to put it too. I mean, like, just to paint a little bit of color here. I mean, think of all these things that have ended disastrously over just the past few years before we even get into the modern times bull market, right? BitConnect, Devor, Plus Token, all those, right? And those, like, authorities are still picking up the pieces there. Authorities across the board are just completely overwhelmed. So it's not to sound heartless to people that will, not if, but will lose out on BitClout. But it's one of those things where I consistently remind the public, if you invest into this, it's not an investment, it's gambling, first of all. You lose your money. Not a lot of folks on the government side are going to feel bad for you. And companies like mine are just completely overworked. This is avoidable. That's the important thing here.
That's right. And Rich, I'm just in my notes here. So there was an article in Decrypt that looked into some of this, and I know they quoted you in that article, but I know, just to be clear, you only spent like literally 1 minute looking into this, so you're not deep down the BitClout rabbit hole yet. But no, it was you. Was it you that said almost all of the funds on the site are going to 3 exchanges: Amber Group, Kraken, tiny amount to Coinbase, and one of the only non-exchange addresses that BitClout paid directly received money from Hydra, a darknet market. So what does that say to you?
So that address that received the 2,900 some odd Bitcoin you were talking about earlier, yep. I was sent that address, and that little graph. I mean, again, that was just like 90 seconds of poking around and seeing what I could find. And there's a lot that I could find in just those 90 seconds as to where they're sending the funds. So, I mean, despite the fact the team is anonymous, the fact that those funds are going to those exchanges doesn't mean that, the real world KYC for the BitClout team is on those exchanges. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they're dealing with somebody, kind of through OTC. It's anyone's guess. But at the end of the day, It's a hop, skip, and a throw away to dox these people at this point. That's effectively certain, right? And that was something pretty common with the 2017 ICOs as well. A lot of these people, oh, I'm a OPSEC god, I'm going to be a pseudonym, I'm going to try to dupe a lot of people. Very well could be in play here. But the thing that was also concerning about all that is that they sent funds to this one particular wallet that had that exact type of concerning exposure I was talking about, right? Having had received from Hydra, having had received from a bunch of crypto ATMs and some particular exchanges in Africa, right? So it's either they paid someone to do some type of could be very well legitimate service, that legitimate being gray area, let's say, social media marketing, could have been any number of things. Maybe they got scammed by, this was really common in 2017, these people pretending to be influencers. Oh yeah, I'll make a promotional video about BitClout. It's a fake Ian Molina or Superman or whoever on Telegram. So either way, I mean, like, there's just so many red flags that are presented, even like with 90 seconds of looking on the blockchain. Again, people need to demand transparency. That's what this is all boiling down to.
Yes, indeed. Okay, well, I think we better leave it there. So, BitClout, buyer beware, and it'll certainly be interesting to see if BitClout plays out, how this plays out. Who ends up being behind it? Will they crash and burn? Will they turn out to be legitimate? Look, anything is possible at this at this stage, but red flags
I'll chime in on that
everywhere.
one though.
Okay.
So like with BitConnect, that was a great example. Well,
Yep.
what if they have the trading bot? How can you prove they don't have the trading bot despite these completely insane and no way are these sustainable yields that they were promising, right? So like that's the big thing. If that's going to be the standard for BitClout, well, can you prove it's a scam? The question needs to be, can you prove it's not a scam? Because if that's the criteria people are going to have, they're going to continue to get burned.
Exactly right. Okay. Well, as I say, buyer beware. What I would love to do with you is just get some thoughts from you on kind of, just best practice, security, all that kind of stuff, because obviously in a bull market is a really good time for people as they see the value of their assets rising. Maybe just do a bit of a security check and make sure they're all as secure as they can be, right?
Absolutely. And here's the final bit of, like, at least finally there's something here, some good news for you, Andy.
Okay, good
Not
news,
not a
Rich.
whole lot has changed since the last time we spoke. Not a whole lot has changed even since 2018 in the context of security. There was a joint write-up we did with My Crypto some years ago called the SIM Swapping Bible, and I would definitely recommend including a link to that for people. If people follow that, which is years old knowledge about use 2FA, specifically utilizing Google Authenticator, Authy, if possible, a YubiKey. Don't reuse passwords, use a password manager. All of that is effectively the same. I don't have new advice there. I would say the thing that people need to focus on isn't so much getting hacked as much as it is getting scammed. And that is something where a lot of the tactics of the scammers are the same, but I think that this is better advice for especially the folks that are new to the whole cryptocurrency space here. The bottom line is this: the best thing that you can do is take your, whatever cryptocurrency you have, your Bitcoin, put it into a hardware wallet, follow the instructions. It specifically says write this seed phrase down. It doesn't say take a picture of it. It doesn't say put it on Google Drive. It says write this down. If you follow that instruction, you want to go for bonus points, put it on the steel or something. I mean, you're not going to get hacked, right? So then from there, this is going to start boiling down into never give your seed phrase, your credentials to anyone for any reason at all. I don't care if they tell you they're the government. I don't care if they tell you that they're Trezor or Ledger. I don't care if they tell you that they're going to give you some type of airdrop. Nobody for any reason at all whatsoever will ever need your seed phrase or private keys. Never send money to someone that you haven't met in person, right? And I know that sounds like a real draconian kind of stance, but unless you've been in this game for a few years, and even then, odds are you're putting yourself at just a needless amount of risk. All of these things that are these kind of gambling and not so much investment, and BitClout is a great example of it. You don't ever go all in. And this is starting to kind of skirt from security to not quite financial advice, but just common sense advice.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the best thing that folks can do, the reason why people always get hacked or scammed, it's going to boil down to one of two things: apathy, meaning that they don't want to follow these instructions, like write this down, it takes effort, and greed. Greed is the number one thing in scams. I want to get rich quick. This person's telling me I can make 95% a day. Everyone on Twitter's talking about BitClout. Whereas if people just kept their sats and just didn't touch them and checked back in 5 years, they would be a lot better off.
Yeah, okay. Look, you make a lot of sense there, Rich. Sometimes this just boils down to, putting in the work, common sense, and then, avoiding apathy is the word you used. But let me just rewind slightly. So you're right. When you set up a hardware wallet or any crypto wallet, it talks you through the process, and then it will say, here's your seed phrase. Do not take a photo. Write this down. Keep it safe. Okay. Here's the thing though, right? Let's say we write it down, we keep it safe, or we write it down, or we use one of these crypto style products. Then what do you do with the seed phrase?
So there's no such thing as a one size fits all. And I think that's worth reiterating here as well, right? There are people that have significant cryptocurrency holdings, in which case it would be sensible to do like a 2 of 3 steal backup. But for a lay person that has, let's say, under $100,000, you take that steal backup, you put it somewhere safe that only you have access to. If you're concerned about, oh, well, what if that gets stolen, you can put another copy in a bank safety deposit box, right? And then, oh, well, what if somebody gets into my bank safety deposit box? That's what a passphrase is for, right? So you can make your passphrase whatever you want. It could be as simple as cat or something more complicated, but something that, you can memorize your passphrase, and then somebody could literally steal your seed phrase and you're fine. The beauty of the blockchain is that all of this has been designed with these problems in mind, right? The issue is that people do have to make choices for themselves, right? And that is where, the government tells you it has to be this way, or the bank tells you it has to be that way, is out of play. People have to make the decision that's right for them, not the decision that's the quickest.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, in anything in life, anything that is hard, there are trade-offs, right? And so if you are going to be a crypto citizen or a blockchain explorer, a crypto asset investor, then essentially, Rich, what you're saying is that you owe it to yourself, and it is your personal responsibility to do your due diligence and learn how to secure your assets and put in the time to secure them. And basically what you're saying is the more value you have, then the more time you should put into making sure everything is secure, right?
Absolutely. And ultimately what it's going to boil down to is this. I could teach somebody that has never heard of Bitcoin before, how to self-custody their Bitcoin on a hardware wallet and store it in a way where it is impossible for them to get hacked in under 90 minutes. And that is a generous amount of time. That is somebody that has never even heard of Bitcoin before. This stuff isn't terribly complex to do. It is a matter of following instructions. Really what this boils down to, again, is that people want to get through this quick. It's boring. It's a dry topic. Maybe they're a little bit used to the centralized protections that like credit cards and this sort have. But these are the same folks that spend hours on Twitter talking about BitClout. This is going to be the next thing that makes me a 10x or 100x. But if they had so much as put 60 to 90 minutes into this, they wouldn't lose. I mean, those are some folks that, they have a password reuse and their Gmail gets compromised, which has the seed phrase in Google Drive. It's just really kind of oopsie. Why did you skip these steps before you started trying to trade your money, right?
Yes, indeed. And as much as, in crypto people, we want to say, not your keys, not your coins. But do you agree that it's also the case that, say we're talking about, I hate to say grandma who's being romance scammed, and let's say grandma who has a Coinbase account, so she's not getting romance scammed, but she's smart enough to perhaps be just chipping away, stacking some sats in her Coinbase wallet. There's not really anything wrong with her just leaving those sats in Coinbase, is there? She doesn't necessarily need to do custody herself.
It's the answer I'll give on that is it's always going to depend on risk appetite and who the person is, right? So if grandma is keeping under 100K on Coinbase and she's done her homework and she's comfortable with the fact, okay, Coinbase hasn't been hacked, I find them to be a reputable company, I find them to be solvent, then okay. The other thing that's important in the example of Coinbase is that they are insured. Important thing here for the audience to understand, they are insured against a hack of the Coinbase exchange. So if your grandma has her password somewhere and isn't using 2FA and somebody logs into your Coinbase account and her sats are gone, that's not Coinbase's insurance. Grandma is screwed. So that's the kind of stuff that grandma has to know in such a scenario. Would Coinbase be an okay choice? I'd say, yeah, that's sensible. Would it make sense to keep those coins on somewhere like KuCoin? Absolutely not, right? Hit BTC, a highly insolvent exchange. You've got to be crazy to do something like that. At the end of the day, it's all about risk reward. And I think a great example there would be a lot of these interest yielding services, right? The BlockFis and the Celsiuses, because those are the more relevant examples, I think, for a lot of the audience. How many of these services have been audited, right? Are they within the galaxy of insolvent as Hit BTC? No. But how many of them have actually been audited? I know that Celsius had one audit at one point, which could not even be the case anymore, that they're still going to pass such an audit. At that point, you're basically trading your sats and the risk of losing whatever you have in there for whatever the 4 to 6% yield is. And if that's your risk appetite, that's your risk appetite. But I think it would be crazy to put all your crypto in something like that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, it's interesting that you talk about BlockFi and Celsius, because you probably would have seen that. I think it was, I can't remember who it was. It was like some obscure lending
Cred?
service. No, not Cred. They're still in business. They're a competitor to BlockFi. And have you seen that website? It's like basically a FUD site against BlockFi. I think
I know what you're talking
ditchblockfi.com.
about. Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's ditchblockfi.com, something like that. And they kind of obviously it's written by a competitor, and so they slam BlockFi quite hard and try and paint them as being at risk of there's the GBTC trade and all sorts of other things. And since that website was published, BlockFi have gone on the PR offensive, and all the big BlockFi shareholders have come out and said, no, there's very little risk. And I think what's his name, Zach, the CEO there, has been on podcasts and so on. So I don't know what the real risk is there, but I think you're the bigger point here, Rich, is that if these guys are creating these massive blockchain companies that are turning into crypto banks and crypto unicorns, they should do some kind of proof of reserve, some kind of audit, because that would be in the best interests of everyone, right?
Absolutely. And the excuse they might come up with is, well, we don't want to have our trading secrets go public. Have a trusted third party do it. All right. I mean, like Chainalysis did it for Celsius. We would be happy to do it. I'm sure there's tons of companies out there that would absolutely be chomping at the bits to do this kind of thing. Really what this is going to boil down to, you mentioned a real interesting point about how their shareholders were advocating for them. I mean, of course they are. They have financial interest in the company, right? And that is the most cancerous thing right now that's going on in this industry, right? These people that are shilling BitClout, of course they're doing it because they have financial interest. BlockFi is no different. Of course, these people that are coming to BlockFi's defense and shoving referral links down people's throats, they make a living off that. They make a living off the fact that they're invested in companies like BlockFi. And I guess that, their job qualification is can share BlockFi referral link to my 100,000 followers. Congratulations, dude. You're a huge contributing member to society. Whatever they have to say about BlockFi being solvent is just based upon nothing than just the generic, thoughtless tweets that they put out on a daily basis and shouldn't be taken seriously.
That is exactly right. All right. Well, look, just as we start to finish off, Rich, so I think you mentioned just earlier on the security stuff, a blog post. Was that one of the ones that is on the CipherBlade blog, right?
I would imagine it's at least linked there. It's on Medium because it was a collaboration between my crypto and our company.
Right, so there's two that I'm looking at here that are on your blog. This one is called A Comprehensive Guide to Cryptocurrency Scams and Frauds, and this is, it is a really big piece, and so I'm going to put links to both these in the show notes, but it goes through, phishing, hard exit scams, ICOs, investment scams masquerading as ICOs, exchanges, soft exit scams, STOs, investment funds, impersonation scammers, blah, 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 blah. So, and that's not even halfway through. And then the other one, which is called
That's just the scams.
We're not even getting into like the security, the hack prevention, right? And I actually just linked the SIM swapping Bible for you in the Zoom chat here.
Okay,
But
yeah. And so, well, here's the other one, which is called List of Breach Vectors Hackers Exploit to Steal Your Crypto. And again, it looks like a 10,000 word piece, but it's cloud storage breach, password breach, SIM swap, backup email, malware, keyloggers, clipboard hijacking, browser extension exploits, and it just goes on and on. I'm starting to get scared, Rich.
it is a little scary, even for folks like you and I that have been at this for a minute, right? So that's why it's so important. We have a duty, especially for these newcomers, to inform them, look, this is be your own bank. You have to protect yourself. You cannot even be saying the word BitClout or BlockFi or any of these until you've taken these steps, and here are the steps, and just hand it to them, right? But the issue is right now in this industry, you've got all these Twitter accounts with 100K followers that just tweet things like coin go up and this generic feel good kind of follower farming stuff, and then all the new blood starts following them because they presume lots of followers credible, right? They're not talking about how to keep these people safe. They're talking about sign up for BlockFi so you can make interest. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to disclose to you I'm making money whenever you sign up. We have a duty as folks that have been in this for a few years to nurture these folks, because what's going to end up happening is that for every person that gets into this now, let's say John Doe sees this on CNN today, Bitcoin's going up, decides to get involved. He throws money into BlockFi, they go insolvent, or he throws money into BitClout because, some moron on Twitter with 100K followers wouldn't shut the hell up about it, and then he gets burned. Do you think he's going to have a good impression in the industry? No, he's going to get the hell away and never look back, right? So regardless of whether or not you even care about your friend that's getting into Bitcoin for the first time, if you care about the industry, do the right thing.
Very, very nice thoughts there, Rich. I like that. If you care about the industry, do the right thing. All right, well, that feels like a nice place to finish off. Rich, do you want to give any final thoughts, final shout outs? Tell the people where they can go to find you on your various platforms, where they can go to engage with CipherBlade, and any closing thoughts. Back to you.
Sure. Shout out wise, I'll give one to my team. I cannot thank them enough. They have been working incredibly hard these past few months. We have seen an amount of demand that I never in my most pessimistic dreams about what would happen for the next bull run. It's been nuts. They're working incredibly hard. It is thanks to their hard work that a lot of good stuff is getting done, right? And that could be anything from helping somebody that's a John Doe that was a scammer hack victim, up to freeing me up to work with law enforcement agencies to work on stuff that's like nation state level concerns. So they definitely deserve a shout out. As far as what to keep tabs on, I think it's becoming more and more plain about who is worth following, whether it's media outlets or whether it's folks on Twitter. I think across the board, just pay attention to what are these folks actually talking about? Or are they talking about coin go up or anything of substance? Which is why Andy's a great follow, Brave New Coin's a great follow. Look at what is being discussed, whether it's in a podcast or a series of articles, and that's a great way to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff.
Fantastic. And look, I can't help but ask, you really have piqued my curiosity. You said nation state level concerns. What are you hinting at? What does that mean in this context, Rich?
Well, saying what I can, there's always going to be concerns with, and this is public domain stuff, North Korea as an example, right? So whether you're looking at situations that, for example, involve ransomware, this is the complicated stuff. This is the stuff that has like the senior investigators and companies like mine busy, which is, by the way, this touches into like BitClout and the ATMs, why it's so tilting that stuff like that can go on, because all of us are just so busy on the complicated stuff. You would think by now, especially after multiple cycles of this, the easy stuff that is just an unnecessary mess to clean up could just be mitigated. It would be nice to actually be able to take a day off. But yeah, when you're getting into stuff that's nation state level or national security concerns, I mean, like, that's not new, right? That's not something that's necessarily bull market related. I mean, the same things existed in 2017 and prior to that as well. The point that I'm trying to bring across there is that there are very, very finite resources in government, and a lot of those resources are being directed to very, very serious stuff. So bear in mind that government's probably not going to be super keen to help you out on your Ponzi.
Yes, indeed. All right. Hey, look, it is always a pleasure to talk to you, Rich. Thank you so much for your time today. Folks, if you're interested in following up on any of this, and if anything has made you think, maybe I do need to relook at my hardware wallet practices and how I store my seed phrase, and even what sort of vulnerabilities my computer might represent. Links to some of these articles are all in the show notes. Take you an hour to read through them all, but probably worth your time. Hey, Rich, thank you very much. All the best. Keep up the good work and keep catching the bad guys, mate.
Pleasure to be with you as always. Thanks for having me on.
All right, there we go. Thank you to Rich for coming back on the show. Always a good time talking to Rich. Now, we recorded today's episode right at the start of the week, so a little bit has happened since then, especially with BitClout. So it's still a bit murky, but it looks like there are some major Silicon Valley investors in this thing. Everyone from Coinbase to Sequoia, Pantera, Winklevoss Capital, Andreessen, lots more even. So yeah, it's a little bit weird, and if they have all this backing, maybe the platform could have been launched in a slightly slicker fashion. Is it a scam? Maybe not a scam, but is it designed to take your Bitcoin? I don't know, but look, it's just all a bit strange. So you need to judge these things for yourself. Rich, of course, is very active on Twitter, and he is continuing to provide his very relevant commentary. So I'll put a link to Rich's Twitter in the show notes so you can keep up with his commentary, and also links are in the show notes to those various security-based essays that we discussed in the show today. All right, well, as always, buyer beware. Scammers are everywhere. Lots happening, never a dull moment. But thank you for listening. Please do subscribe to the Crypto Conversation podcast in whatever app you are using. Feel free to give us a rating in iTunes. Always appreciate that stuff. And don't forget, please get in touch if you've got any feedback. Get at me on Twitter, Andy Pickering NZ, or just drop me an email, andy@bravenewcoin.com. All right, that's us. We're out of here for today. Thanks for listening. Cheers. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave